You're a rich girl and you're gone too far.
Hopefully today's review will be short and sweet and to the point, largely because I'm tired. I want to go to bed, but I've got to get this done, and every time I say I'm going to get my reviews done, I don't, so I'm batch reviewing tonight. Second, because this one, not that it was bad, but it honestly wasn't worth much of a mention. On that note, I feel like I've got to apologize for my review of Siri Mitchell's She Walks in Beauty. Not that it necessarily changes my opinion of how I felt, but it definitely changed my opinion as to kind of how much better it is than its contemporaries from the time period it's written in. And the Luxe by Anna Godbersen is right there. I love anything golden age, Victorian era. Yeah, and this one just doesn't do it. It's just too superficial. Side note, I've had this book on my TBR for nigh on 10 to 15 years, and I 100% wanted to read this book because of the cover and because of the title, which I will include that here. I haven't done that in a long time, but it's such a stunning cover, and along with that, the title, you just want to read it. Yeah, the dust jacket was interesting, but frankly, as time went on and I was reading the synopsis, I was like, this doesn't seem like a really deep book. And it wasn't. I pray that the fact that I had this audiobook was because it was like a $4.99 audiobook. I was like, sure, let's just pay $5 and it won't matter if we like it. Sometimes you just want to get your $5 back, though. I think there's 4 books in this series. It could have had so much more potential. I would say if you are a teenager or you are middle grade, read it. It's very similar to Gossip Girl, so don't expect a lot from it. I mean, it wasn't a poorly written book. It just lacked substance, and I felt like it lacked development and plot and just something to sink your teeth into. It could have been written better in terms of painting a picture in your mind. And frankly, I don't really know what the point of this book was. Is it the story? Is it to put you in a time and place? I think if we'd had 1 or 2 fewer perspectives, it would have been better. But what do I know? I just read and I try to write. The Luxe by Anna Godbersen is about this young woman named Elizabeth Holland. We start with her death and then we dive into her life. She's one of New York's elite, and we're getting another look at the other side of the glitz and the glam. We open with Elizabeth's funeral. We kind of meet her contemporaries. We meet all of these young men who woulda, coulda, shoulda been her suitors. We meet this one girl named Agnes who maybe she plays a greater part in the successive novels, but in this novel, I don't understand why we had to zero in on her. She had been Elizabeth's best friend when she was younger. They are no longer best friends now, and not that Agnes knows anything about this. A lot of it, I think, had to do with her station in life lowered. We meet Penelope, who would be Elizabeth's current best friend, but they're really more like frenemies, at least on Penelope's side. And then we meet Henry Schoonmaker, who is Elizabeth's fiance, and that should have been their wedding day. Finally, we meet Diana, who is Elizabeth's younger sister. And then we jump into the weeks preceding this, but the final image we get is the white ribbon on her casket because Elizabeth Holland died a virgin. So then, because of other things that happen in this novel, I'm wondering, is this a commentary on society? Is this a commentary on how virginity should not be so highly regarded? And even though in this time and place it was like the utmost of importance, it really wasn't that important. I don't really know what Godbersen was trying to say, but I don't think she was trying to be that deep, so I'm not going to try to be that deep. My thing here is Elizabeth, for all intents and purposes, to the public eye, is very demure. Ergo, she's boring. But Elizabeth herself, when we see her, is not demure. She's not boring. She's everything but. She is the exact opposite of what public perception is. I couldn't decide if I would have preferred more Elizabeth, because frankly, we did not get enough. Or if I would have preferred no Elizabeth at all. And I think ultimately I'm leaning towards no Elizabeth at all. I would have preferred for her to have been an enigma. For us to have this idea of Elizabeth not knowing who she is at all, and then somehow learning, whoa, that is not Elizabeth Holland, and just be hit in the face with the fact that public perception was wrong. Because literally every character in this novel dislikes Elizabeth, from her fiance Henry, to Penelope, to her servant's maid Lena, to her sister Diana. Who likes Elizabeth? So I thought that would have made it really interesting for everybody in the public to be like, oh, Elizabeth, she's fantastic, but behind closed doors be like, Elizabeth Holland is the worst person ever. But we'll get into why they think she's the worst person ever. When we open, outside of finding out she's dead, we learn that she has just returned from a summer in Paris. Penelope is throwing this ball because they have just built this great new house on Fifth Avenue. Little bit of a spoiler here. Elizabeth's dad had passed away, I think a year or so prior. He had passed away in his sleep from a heart condition, but it turns out that he'd actually been killed. Whatever the circumstances, he left them destitute. They have no money. So we are seeing this comparison of Penelope Hayes, whose family is actually new money and are kind of buying their way into society, versus Elizabeth's family, who is old money, well established, but actually they have no money whatsoever. But they live in Gramercy Park. So Penelope is turning up her nose at the fact that even though Elizabeth is this hoity-toity, high almighty, old money family, well, look at where you are versus look at where I am. So if you like a petty novel, you'll probably like this one. I could not get over the fact that it did not fill a need. I just kept waiting for something of value, and I didn't get anything. I just got mad, annoyed, frustrated, because I was like, why are all the characters that get screen time unlikable? Elizabeth has come back to town and she is bemoaning whoever has to dance with this certain gentleman, only for that certain gentleman to be like, oh, what's up, let's dance. We pull back and we meet Diana, who is the younger sister, and I think Diana is supposed to be that quirky, lovable, fun younger sister who bucks society, and that's why we're supposed to like her. But personally, I found her to be really annoying because what was her point? I thought she was super selfish. And why doesn't she like Elizabeth? Essentially because Elizabeth is everything she's not. Elizabeth is the pride and joy. So all these characters who dislike her, it's rooted in jealousy. We see Diana trying to make out with some guy's assistant in the coat closet, only to realize, you know what, I don't actually like making out with him, so I'm glad that somebody interrupted so I can leave you in the dust. We transition over to Penelope. Penelope has been having an affair with Henry. I do not plan on reading the rest of the books, so hold on. Now, we're not going to do the major spoiler, but in regards to Penelope's relationship with Henry, it is money-driven. She's just a really selfish, superficial, self-centered person who likes money, status, and power. She has this relationship with him. She has not revealed this to Elizabeth. She has only let Elizabeth know that she is in some kind of torrid affair with somebody. She has a best friend named Buck, who may or may not actually be related to a really well-to-do family, but he's in her inner circle. He's kind of in on all of her pettiness. Henry has not arrived at this ball yet. He's actually having a meeting with his father. His father has married this young 20-something who's more suitable for Henry, and she's in his age bracket, but has married the father. And Henry, he's a cad. He's a ne'er-do-well. He just likes to have his fun. The dad, though, planning on running for governor. What he's got to do is he has to maintain/improve his image, and to do that, he has to maintain/improve Henry's image. And what's the best way to do that? Marry Henry off to a reputable female. He knows, he has heard something about Henry's involvement with Penelope, so he's kind of talking to Henry, and Henry's like, no, she's not really somebody I see myself with. And his dad's like, that's great, because I've got somebody else for you in mind, Elizabeth Holland. Henry's like, her? Which I was hoping for more between them so that he could see that Elizabeth isn't as stodgy and boring as he thinks, but we never get that. Elizabeth, meanwhile, is having an affair with their valet, this guy named Will. How they got involved, I don't know. How long have they been involved? I don't know, but they are involved. Unfortunately for them, Elizabeth's lady's maid, Lena, is also in love with Will. She and Elizabeth had, I don't know if they'd necessarily been friends, bosom buddies. They had been closer when they were younger, but then when Elizabeth started coming of age and having to rise to her status, that naturally broke whatever relationship they had. But I think the bigger issue for Lena is that she's jealous. She does not like being a lady's maid. She does not like having to serve anybody. She wants to be the one who is served. She wants the money. She wants the power. She wants the freedom. She also wants Will. She sees that everything Elizabeth has done since the age of 14 or 15 to be a snub to her. And that's when I needed more of Elizabeth, because we get nothing. We do not see Elizabeth's side about that. She does briefly acknowledge the fact they had been closer when they were younger, but all we see from her now is that she doesn't understand Lena, and she doesn't understand Lena's attitude or behavior. Lena, not happy that Elizabeth is back, because now that Elizabeth is back, she actually has to do her job. She does have a sister named Claire who is there, and Claire apparently loves what she does. They're very opposite, but I think Lena is more responsible for Elizabeth. What I read was that Claire is kind of more responsible for Diana, and that they have a decently close relationship. Personally, I didn't see any of that in this book. It felt more like, yeah, Claire did take care of Diana, but she was more of a general servant as well, whereas Lena was specifically for Elizabeth. I thought it was strange, okay, maybe not that she didn't go to Paris, but that she still wasn't responsible for certain tasks in Elizabeth's absence. I mean, the fact that she got to be so lackadaisical and was like, I can't believe Elizabeth is home because literally I actually have to do my job now. I just don't know how we were supposed to feel about Elizabeth. I got bored. Lena, in avoiding her responsibilities, sees Elizabeth sneak into the carriage house and obviously is going to have an affair with Will. Did I say Lena? I keep saying the wrong names. But Lena had been planning on expressing her feelings towards Will because with Elizabeth gone, they had been able to spend more time together, and I don't know if this is when she fell in love with Will or her feelings just grew stronger during the summer, but she had tried to kind of discuss things with him, and he was like, see you later, alligator. Now she sees Elizabeth sneaking into the carriage house, and she's like, not only does she have what I want, but she also has the man that I want. Girl's going down. When we have all of this going on, and Elizabeth gets engaged to Henry, it's kind of like mutually beneficial. Unfortunately for Elizabeth, Henry meets Diana. And Diana is everything Elizabeth's not, even though he literally has, I don't know if he's ever spoken to Elizabeth. He's not had any kind of interaction to actually know who she is for real, but something about Diana's free spirit catches his attention and he can't stop thinking about her. I believe it is when he has come to officially speak with Elizabeth about their engagement. He and Diana have this little thing over his hat, and they fall for each other. He ends up sending her this hat as a token of his affection. Whatever, it comes into play later. As would be, Penelope and Elizabeth attend a dinner at the Shoemaker's, and this is where it's revealed, well, Penelope still hasn't told Elizabeth. So literally, moments before the big announcement is made, she tells Elizabeth she's been having an affair with Henry. Yeah, can you guess how angry she is at the fact that Elizabeth gets her man? Can we ignore the fact that Elizabeth had literally no idea anything was happening? She's been gone all summer. Whose fault is that Elizabeth doesn't know? Of course, nobody fills Penelope in on the why behind the relationship, behind the engagement. Penelope figures out that something's got to be going on because she can tell on both sides neither one of them wants to be engaged to the other. If anything, Godbersen did a great job at creating really unlikable characters, but they felt very one-dimensional. In light of this news, Penelope is like, well, I'm just gonna sabotage her. Keep her even closer than she already was. In an effort to get Henry and Elizabeth to spend some time with each other, he comes over so that they can go on a ride. Well, the problem is they need a chaperone. Will do really well because he's gonna be driving them anyways. And Elizabeth's like, no. Because she hasn't managed to tell him. Lena knows, but she has not managed to tell Will that she's engaged to Henry, because when she did try, he's like, I don't want to hear about it. Like, I don't need to know about this part of your life. There's no other option. So, like, let's just have Diana come along. Well, by this point, Lena has told Will. So Will is having his own little hissy fit. He's not being very careful about driving this cart or this buggy, this carriage, or whatever it is. And he's being very curt with Henry and Elizabeth. They get to the park, and wouldn't you know it, the ribbon keeping Diana's hat on comes loose. Her hat flies off. She and Henry run after it in their little playful, flirtatious, whatever bantery moment. Meanwhile, Elizabeth has a convo with Will, and he reveals to her that he plans on leaving. He's gonna go to California. He wants her to come with him. Over with Henry and Diana, yeah, okay, I think they catch the hat, but the ribbon's a goner. No, eventually Henry does send Diana a gift, and it is a new ribbon for her hat. As happens in high society, we have yet another event for the fine young ladies of New York to attend. Elizabeth and Penelope are gonna go to Lord & Taylor to get dresses. Diana comes along. She couldn't care less. The only interesting part of this outing for her is any snippets of Henry that she can get. She definitely notices something's off between these two, and Elizabeth has chosen Penelope to be her maid of honor because of some kind of promise they had made when they were younger, and she's profusely apologetic to Diana about the fact that she chose Penelope. Neither girl wants to be her maid of honor, and I feel so bad for Elizabeth because nobody likes her. Nobody wants to participate in anything with her. Nobody wants to celebrate in any of her stuff. But what I find interesting is all this demure behavior that they perceive from her is really just her being really distracted because she's thinking of Will. So all these moments where she should be upset because Henry doesn't show up, it's really her thinking about Will, her being preoccupied with Will. And so she's not crying and heartbroken. I mean, because she's not, but like, because that's not even where her focus is. So I thought it's not intended to be humorous, but I needed to find something entertaining in this book. So I did think it was really interesting, really funny. how all of these perceptions, they're just so far off base, because that's not who she is at all. I guess she's really good at presenting herself, so even when she's off in La La Land, people think she's this great lady. After Lord and Taylor, this is when they come home to discover the ribbon from Henry. Claire and Lena, meanwhile, have some slight discussion over the Holland's finances because Claire had overheard something, but there's nothing definitive. From Elizabeth's perspective, she does see stuff that her mom is selling off. I was a little surprised that no mentions were made by Lena about things in this household disappearing, or there's no chatter amongst the staff. We lacked layers in this novel. It was really just surface level as to what's happening. The night of the event, Elizabeth fully expected Will to be gone. Surprise of surprises, he drives them to this event. This is supposed to be her first public outing with Henry. Well, Penelope had devised this plan for Henry to go out on a boat with Buck and this other guy so that Buck could get him rip-roaringly drunk so that he will not show up. Well, yeah, her plan works. She goes to find him, and apparently, so she has this habit of burning his letters. Apparently he had tried to break it off with her in a letter, and she was too preoccupied with something to pay attention to that, and then she burns the letter. But he officially breaks it off with her here, and then she leaves. After the event, Elizabeth goes to find Will at the carriage house and discovers that he has actually left. I guess the whole reason for him to have driven her was the off chance that she would leave the party and come to him and they could go, which she did not do. But she goes to the carriage house. She's looking for him. She doesn't find him. Lena does find her. Lena confronts her about the relationship with Will and just comes for her. It's not a really pretty sight. She says that Elizabeth never deserved Will. Elizabeth looks at her, reminds her of her place, and then essentially says she has a mind to fire her, so watch it. Lena couldn't care less. I would have liked so much more character development because I wanted to know how and why Lena got to this point in her mindset. What got her there? Why is she so different from her sister? Why is she so different from the other maids of her time? Not that they all want to escape their stations in life, but like, so many of them keep their head down and do what they're supposed to do. But Lena didn't seem to care at all. After Elizabeth leaves, Lena does some investigation of her own, and I didn't really understand this, but Henry had left a note for Elizabeth in his nightstand drawer. I don't know why he wouldn't have put it somewhere that Elizabeth actually could have found it. Perhaps they have a secret knot in a tree that they would hide their correspondences or whatever. I guess his assumption was she would come to his room, she would search his nightstand drawer. We do not get any perspective from Will, so I do not know his mindset, and we don't get enough of him and Elizabeth to really understand him at all. But Lena's like, well, I'm gonna go and find him. The train has already left. She tries to buy a ticket only to it be pointed out she can't afford one. She has no money, and this just makes her all the more determined to get money and to leave and to go find Will and just escape her lot in life. And of course, all of this she blames on Elizabeth because we lacked so much character development and backstory that I found it really hard to care. I just got annoyed and frustrated that everything was Elizabeth's fault and that Elizabeth was the bad guy. And this is when I wished I'd had no Elizabeth, so I could absolutely say she's at fault. Like, Elizabeth, she's got her nose in the air and she thinks she's better than everybody. And yeah, like, all these people have a right to dislike her. Henry's dad hears about how a young woman had been in his rooms. So he approaches Henry and he's like, I guess you don't understand what's happening here. You're not going to fix your ways. So the best thing we can do is move the wedding up. So we're going to move the wedding to next Sunday. Henry then goes to visit Elizabeth to discuss this change of plans. As they're discussing it, Elizabeth feels something hot on her leg, and it turns out Lena is pouring hot water for the tea onto her leg. I mean, except for the fact that Lena doesn't like Elizabeth. Why? Why is she doing this in front of another person? That's what gets me. Not that she would try to hurt or do something to get back at Elizabeth for all of the injustice she feels that she has suffered at Elizabeth's hand, but I would think she would have enough common sense as a lady's maid to do it in private. Elizabeth has had enough as she fires her on the spot. Lena then leaves and she is discovered by Penelope because Penelope's driving down the street. I think she recognizes Lena, so she's like, yo, what's up? Like, get up in the carriage, because she's trying to figure out a way to sabotage Elizabeth, to bring Elizabeth down, to get dirt on Elizabeth. And here is Lena on a silver platter. Lena still has this letter that Will had written to Elizabeth, and it's on the Holland family stationery, if not Elizabeth's stationery. This is all the proof that they need, but she spills the beans about how Elizabeth is not white as snow. Not only has she been sleeping around, but she's been sleeping with the help, which I think is rich, which it goes back to how well Godbersen did with developing these antagonists, because later in the novel, Penelope accuses Elizabeth of being a hussy and sleeping around. I'm like, isn't that exactly what you're doing with Henry? If not other men? Look past the log in your own eye, you know? Lena wants, because the ring that Henry had bought for Elizabeth was rumored to be worth $1,000. She and Claire had had a slight discussion as to what $1,000 could do for them. And you know what? Not only could $1,000 do, what could $1,000 do for me? I know $1,000 was a lot more back then than it is now, but still, I will take $1,000. So yeah, I'll share in that pot. But she requests $1,000 for Penelope for this information, as well as future information. Penelope, even though she totally could have gotten Lena that sum of money, talks her down to $500. She also sets her up in a hotel, but because she can't actually be nice, she sets her up in a hotel in a very disreputable part of town, if you know what I'm saying. Lena, walking around feeling all fancy pants, kind of forgets what it means to actually be a fancy pants, and realizes that even though she's got some money and her freedom and, I don't know, some potential bribery in the future, she doesn't actually fit in. Who she does meet is this guy named Tristan Wilde. He works at Lord & Taylor. In future books, he is able to help her reinvent herself, and then she's able to get the money and the status and all the things that she wants. But for this book, we don't actually see much of that. All we know is that the one thing that these uppity guys keep, like when she goes into, I think she goes into Lord & Taylor, when she goes into this hotel or maybe this store, they just keep looking at her shoes. And so the one thing he does do is he buys her a pair of shoes. And that's kind of where we see the end of Lena. Meanwhile, Henry has left a book, and Diana finds this book, and inside the book is a piece of paper asking her to come meet him at his greenhouse. I honestly thought this whole thing was kind of a letdown. As a spoiler, they never end up together. Like, in the end, they do not end up together. I am just waiting for him to treat her the same way as he has treated every other female that he has encountered. Like, she's just a plaything. But it seems that even though he does not know her, her wild spirit and her playful attitude make her different, make him want to have a different relationship with her than he's had with any. He respects her more. I don't even know. Whatever the case, she's like, absolutely, I'm gonna go meet him at his greenhouse. She sneaks away. I don't think they actually sleep together, but they basically do 20 questions, and she learns the first person he slept with, and then the last person he slept with was Penelope. It doesn't really matter. It apparently just goes to show that Henry has a heart of gold when it comes to Diana, and these two are truly in love. Elizabeth, on the other hand, has gone wedding dress shopping, and she's brought Penelope with her. I am confused here. When they have no money, I don't really know what that means. But there has been a mention, Lord and Taylor, hey, you have an outstanding balance, when are we going to get paid? Yet, for one of the events, she has gotten a new dress, and now she's getting a wedding dress. And I understand some of this is probably being done on the promise of the money to come. Considering that money is the impetus behind this wedding, I expected it to play a bigger role, for there to be more mention of it, for there to be more consideration over, should I even be doing this? Like, can we afford this? Are they gonna turn me away? Somebody gonna pull me aside while I'm, getting fitted? So as she is looking for a wedding dress, Penelope reveals she knows that Elizabeth has been sleeping with the help. At first, I thought that Elizabeth had stood up for herself and was basically like, do your worst. But it seems that it's more like, yeah, I really don't want this to get out. But Penelope suggests, you come to my house tomorrow morning and I will have come up with a plan for this engagement to end without your reputation being ruined. Of course, Penelope goes on her merry way and is like, how can I take Elizabeth down? So she and Buck are plotting, because not only does she not want this engagement to go through, she just wants to end Elizabeth. And it sounds like she wants to end it in the most permanent way possible. After this, Elizabeth goes home and she just has a crisis of conscience. So she decides to go and read some old letters from her father. One of them is basically, to your own heart be true. So she goes to talk to her mom. She's like, Mom, I know you want me to do this, but I was reading something from Dad and I just don't think that's what he wants from me. I think he wants me to follow my heart. This is when her mother reveals that her dad had been murdered and they are absolutely destitute. And yeah, that might be how he did feel, but that's not how he would feel now. He would tell her to do what's right for her family. And oh, by the way, if you don't marry Henry, you are not my daughter. So it looks like Elizabeth is just going to follow through with this. Needing solace, she goes to Diana's room, which, I don't know. This is when this lack of character development and background really bothers me, because I don't know how she feels about Diana. It seems that she has no idea how Diana feels about her. She is oblivious enough not to have picked up on how Diana treats her. But does she really think they're that close that she can go to Diana, despite the fact that she has no clue Diana's having an affair with her fiance? Does she really feel like they're that close where she can go and cry on Diana's shoulder? Especially because earlier in the novel, they had some kind of combo, and Diana comments on the fact that this is something they haven't done in years. They have not connected. They have not had a conversation. They've not really had a true interaction in years. I guess when you need someone, you need someone. But in my opinion, this was a plot device, because she goes to Diana's room and Diana's not there. But before she realizes Diana's not there, she goes into her room and finds it is a hot mess express. She starts cleaning it up and she finds Henry's hat. And she puts all the pieces together and she realizes that I guess Diana and Henry have true feelings for each other, because she really knows them. She's been part of this relationship, and I think this has been like 2 weeks, maybe a month. That's kind of the last we see of Elizabeth, except As she is on her way to go visit Penelope, she sees Diana getting out of Henry's carriage, and she sees the wistful glance, the longing look that Henry gives her sister, and she knows that's real love. They make eye contact. They acknowledge, yeah, this is how it's gonna be. Mutual respect for the fact that this is how it's gonna be, which I respect. I mean, as much as I'm a cynic and I want people to actually love each other, I respect the idea that this is what the times were about. You didn't always marry, or you rarely would marry for love. It was more about contract. It was more about what you could get by marrying somebody. So I'm not actually against them not even liking each other. I would have liked to have seen them grow to respect and admire, revere each other. But honestly, like, she was so caught up in Will, she could barely say 2 words to Henry. And Henry, just too selfish to even show up half the time. And when he was there, he was obsessing over Diana. So that's the last we see of Elizabeth, is of Elizabeth seeing Henry on the street. Enter Diana, and she has gone into her room, and she has seen that somebody has cleaned up her room. She has seen the hat placed very carefully in the middle of the bed, and she knows that Elizabeth knows. And then she hears a scream, because Penelope has shown up with this sob story about how they were driving. She was in this kind of buggy that was something that she would be able to drive, but she wasn't used to it. It's super high up. Horses got spooked. Elizabeth got thrown into the river. Diana's first thought is, oh my gosh, Elizabeth killed herself because she knows about my affair and she can't handle it. She does have a hard time buying. She's like, are you sure she didn't throw herself in the water? But yeah, all this comes down to is that Elizabeth has died. Now we are at the funeral. Henry, he still wants Diana, but Diana is bereft. Why is Diana bereft? I don't know, because she didn't really care for her sister, but she is. Everybody is leaving, and this boy comes up to her. He has a message for her. But first, she has to prove who she is. And remember when I said that their mother had been selling off things? Well, one of the things that she had sold was a Vermeer painting. This painting had been purchased when Elizabeth was young, and it was supposed to go to Diana, but I guess Elizabeth showed some kind of deep understanding for a girl her age, so she got to keep this painting, but it was supposed to go to Diana when Diana turned 16. However, the dad had died by then, so Diana never got this painting. The whole prove who you are was about, he mentions this painting and Diana's like, oh, you mean the painting that's supposed to be mine? So the kid's like, yeah, this is the right person. Hands over this letter. Yeah, spoiler alert, biggest spoiler of all, Elizabeth's not dead. I don't really know whose plan it was, but whatever the plan was, they faked her death. She has gone to California and she is with Will. And that's where the story ends. It definitely felt like a small part of a bigger story. I would have liked to have seen what the whole book would have been like together, because maybe it would have felt more complete. Yeah, so there we go. That's the Luxe. I think I actually pretty good. 20, 30 minutes? Oh, 47. Wow. My time really does fly. Yeah, there we go. Have a great day. Bye.